if we became a charter county, aside from giving us more control over our county, which is always ideal, more local control, we would also be making it so that we have better representation as well.
That's great. Now, you've been active in a number of other areas that deal with getting better representation. There's something I signed the other day in front of a store. It was a petition to divide California up into 6 parts. Can you tell us anything about that?
Yes. Now, that initiative is an idea to split California up. Californians have been trying to do this for a while. I believe as early as late 1800s, we were considering splitting up the California into North and Southern California. I think LA and everything down was going to split off. And there was overwhelming support in California for that, but Congress never acted on it. So this is an idea to try that again, but now our population has exploded even more since then, so the problem's even worse. We have some of the worst representation in the country, as I was talking about, representation. Each assembly member here represents about 450,000 people. The next largest state is Texas, and they're about a third of our district size. So if we split the state up, it'd be easier to have a body that represented less people. We could have more control about our issues in the federal level as well, because we get more senators to represent the diverse areas of California. Because part of the problem right now is Southern California is just so populous that they can control anything that happens in California. Just if there was a Northern and Southern California conflict, Southern California is going to win. So if you split the state up, areas that have traditionally not have any control, like say the Jefferson area that wants to become a whole country by themselves, they might be able to at least have more control over what goes on in the little state, North California. But what's nice about it also is that even though there are some preliminary ideas for how the states would be drawn up, the initiative allows it so that each county can actually decide to become part of a different part of the new Californias as long as they are adjacent to that area. So it might say that, for example, my county might be in, I think, I believe not North California. Forget exactly where it would be, but if we were bordered or one of the other ones, we can join
North
as part
California,
of that.
I believe it would be.
North
yes.
California? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a very interesting idea. Another part about it is I mentioned charter counties. It actually gives charter counties more control. So even if we vote for this and Congress never does anything about it, which is quite possible, like they did before, they might just ignore it because they have to actually agree to let us split up the state according to the U.S. Constitution. But if they did nothing, this provision would still stand, and it would make it so charter counties have a little more control over how they operate their municipal operations or municipal affairs.
Now, you've been involved in something else called the neighborhood legislature. What is that all about?
The neighborhood legislature is an idea to make it so that our districts are very small. So as I mentioned earlier, California has the worst representation in the country. We're 450,000 people for every one state assemblyman in our lower house. The average is one for every 60,000. But what's really interesting is about 12 states, maybe a little less than that, have one for every 10,000 or less. And in these states, there was a Rose Institute study that evaluated how they operated, and it found that they're much less partisan the way they operate. They introduce less legislation, but they pass more of it, so you see less symbolic type legislation that goes nowhere, more problem solving. They have more gender diversity. New Hampshire, for example, the smallest districts in the country, has 39% women in the lower house. They also have a lot more ideological diversity. New Hampshire also, we've heard of the Free State Project. They have a lot of people that are very libertarian leaning, very green leaning. But the idea is when you get small districts, money is not an issue anymore. The big spenders don't really have control over the outcomes, and people are much more better at representing their constituents. So, for example, in New Hampshire, where each district is 3,000 people, much smaller than our 450,000, the average race is one with about $750. And more than half the people in the lower house spend less than $500 to run because they go door to door, they talk about issues, and they make it so that the issues are more about what constituents are concerned about. They're not, talking about talking points. They're getting very specific about what problems there are in the community and how they can help them. So I think that if we did this in California, what the neighborhood legislature would do would make something similar, make it so that the state assembly would be one for every 5,000 and the state senate would be one for every 10,000. And the way we prevent this from bankrupting California is that we pay each of the state assemblymen and state senators $1,000 a year, which doesn't sound like a lot, but in New Hampshire they get $100 a year and they have to drive to the Capitol, they have to write bills, they have to do amendments. They're doing a lot more work. These neighborhood legislators in California would be sitting at home, voting from home, And the way that we would get the intricate parts of bills done is that they would be electing someone to be on what's called a working committee. And these people in the working committee would be functioning the same way state legislators do at the Capitol today. So today, we have 80 people in the state assembly and 40 people in the state senate. These would be the working committee members. So we take existing districts we have for those state senators and state assemblymen, carve 100 mini districts in all of those where they represent 5,000 or 10,000, depending on which house. And those people in the small districts elect one person amongst themselves to represent that larger district, and they would go to Sacramento. And in Sacramento, that would be the person that would be writing the bills, doing amendments, sitting on subcommittees, and this would function a lot like a subcommittee does today. So right now, you vote for your state assemblyman or woman, but you don't get to vote on who's on the state assembly public safety subcommittee. They vote amongst themselves for someone to be on the public safety subcommittee. So similarly, you would vote for your neighborhood legislator. They would be one of 100 people who would vote to send someone to Sacramento to deal with intricacies of legislation and pass things. The difference would be once they pass something at the Capitol, they would send it back down to the neighborhood legislators for up or a down vote. And once that passes there, it would go to the governor, and he would either veto it or sign it.
Now, what has to happen in order for this new structure to come into place?
Well, we have to pass the initiative. That's the main focus right now. We're currently in the signature gathering stage for both the neighborhood legislature and the 6-state California initiative. If anyone's interested in helping gather signatures as well, we can. I believe the going rate is a little over $2 for every 2 signatures. So that means that if you get a signature for 6 Californias and a signature for the neighborhood legislature, you get a little over $2 for the 2 of those. And that's the main push right now. We're trying to get as many signatures as we can, qualify both initiatives so people have an opportunity to vote on it. If it does pass, then that'd be great. We can actually get some small districts in California. We won't have this crazy system where it takes about $700,000 to win an assembly race, according to a LA Times article. This could be done by the state legislators as well. It's just not very likely because they have to choose to reduce their own power. It happened a few times in our country's history at the U.S. House level. They made districts smaller about 3 times. They started at 40,000 for every one representative. Now it's exponentially increased. But as far as I know, only Tim Donnelly supports reducing the size of districts in California. And you got to get a lot more people to get on board with that for them to willingly reduce their own power. So this seems like the best method, having people just vote for it via initiative.
Great. I wish you well on your campaign.
Thank you.